My name is Bob Mockney, the Director of the U.S. Visit Program. U.S. Visit is a program for the Department of Homeland Security that uses biometrics to facilitate the operations of most of DHS. We started with fingerprints because that's the one that we believe is the most effective for ferreting out the criminality of the individual. But it's not the best one for transactions. So we've been looking at iris scans and facial recognition as one that you can process people a lot more quickly. You don't have to touch anything. It's not as invasive as the fingerprints. So we'll always use the fingerprint as the basis of identity for an individual. But we've talked with our partners about what we call the 13, 10 fingers, the 2 iris, and the face. And by having those 13 biometrics, we believe that we have a pretty good foundation of the identity of an individual from a biometric standpoint. But I think the other thing we have to remember too is that it's not all about biometrics. Biometrics alone just basically tell you have a biometric. And so what we do is link biographic information associated with that biometric to get a full picture of the identity of the individual. Right now we have a limited production pilot with the Border Patrol down in McAllen, Texas, where we're capturing the irises of individuals who they detain, who are trying to sneak across the border. We capture those images, and then as we process that person back into Mexico, they take the irises a second time to make sure that they can match, that make sure that they support the operations. So that's basically looking at the technology in an operational environment. We've been looking at facial recognition technologies. There are a host of other areas where we would use the irises, but we're not sticking just to iris and to face. We're going to be looking at other modalities as well. Well, everybody within DHS, and in fact, even outside of DHS, needs to identify people. And so it's one of the hallmarks of what government does is to provide services and or to detain or to look for an individual. And so across DHS, of course, we have CBP at our ports of entry, and we need to do that quickly. We need to do that unobtrusively, and we need to make sure that we also keep the bad people out of the country. But we also have Immigration and Customs Enforcement, who have been not piloting the program, Secure Communities. They've been launching the program for some time now. So now we're at 3,000 law enforcement locations across the U.S., all 50 states, 4 territories, and even the District of Columbia. And what that allows is when local, state and local law enforcement arrest someone, that information is also transferred to the Immigration and Customs Enforcement entity, and they can find that person if they need to be deported. USCIS provides benefits to people, and they need to identify people properly. So they have about 130 application support centers where they capture biometrics and other biographic information to ensure that the person is eligible for the benefits. The Coast Guard is a big user of biometrics, and they do this out in the middle of the ocean. So they encounter people on boats, and they want to identify who they really are. Are they a threat to the Coast Guard, and how can they be better identified? So across the DHS spectrum, we provide all these services. And then there's the Department of State and the Department of Justice, who we also support, including the Department of Defense. So we have 150 million unique identities, which consist primarily of 2-print and 10-print encounters. So when we started the program back in 2003, 2004, we just captured the 2 prints. And then back in 2006, 2007, we went to a 10-print system. So we're still capturing 10 prints of people that we encountered some years before, but we have, and we grow, like I said in my speech, we grew about 13.5 million identities, new identities every year. We average probably around 10 million new people every year. The State Department is already beginning to set up iris capture devices in some of the consulates overseas, and as I said, we're looking at the face. But right now, the facial capture that we use isn't of facial recognition technology. So we're looking at new cameras and new capture processes to assist in that. But at some point, we'd like to have the 13, which enable us to identify individuals in any given way, whether that be through, again, ports of entry, through global entry, or through CIS, and of course, the FBI, who we partnered with in a very big way, have been capturing irises with a pilot program for a lot of law enforcement entities. Well, the big push really is to work with other countries. And so as other countries have seen kind of the benefits of using biometric for identity management with respect to immigration services, they are beginning to modify their processes as well to incorporate biometrics. But we've also seen countries like India and Indonesia and Nigeria who are issuing national ID cards and ways to facilitate citizen services. And so we're going to work with these other countries because ultimately we believe that the biometric capture is an important element of immigration, but it's also important to share appropriate information because transnational criminals are still going to try and get into our respective countries, and where we can share that information, we will. We have a terrific program with what we call the 5-Country Conference, which is Canada, Australia, New Zealand, the UK, and ourselves. And there we are setting up a secure real-time platform. It'll be a system-to-system interface where any of the 5 countries can get information that the others may have. That helps in visa issuance, that helps in port of entry processing, it helps in identifying refugees or people that you might find in the country without any identification, and they can determine who that person may be. In addition, we're working with a host of countries within the visa waiver program on what we call the Preventing and Combating Serious Crime Initiative. And what that does is a partnership with Immigration and Customs Enforcement and the Federal Bureau of Investigation, along with U.S. Visit, to go to these 37 countries, conclude agreements in which we can share fingerprint information for law enforcement purposes. So it's expanding the use of biometrics, getting other countries to understand how they can best be used, but making sure they follow all the privacy, all the standards, all the collaborative efforts that we have embarked on ourselves. And to that end, I think that we would encourage a global body to make sure that these countries have an entity to go to ensure what those standards are, to ensure that privacy is being fulfilled, to ensure that they have educational outreach with the respective people who are going to be affected by these biometrics. So we strive very hard to protect the information, to build security into the system, and what we don't want is a country to not build the proper privacy protocols or security protocols, because if there's a breach of data, that can set us back a lot of time that an effort that we put forward these past 9 years. And I think these conferences are very, very important, especially when we have declining budgets. So there's not a lot of work out there for the biometric industry, but certainly when we get together like this, we can engage in a conversation and talk about what we've done and talk about what we could possibly do in the future. And as long as we're continuing those conversations at conferences like this, I think it's important because we will recover and our budgets will increase at some point, and then there will be a next wave of biometric implementation, whatever that might be. And we want to make sure that we're in constant communication with the identity industry so that we can leverage each other's information, leverage each other's experiences, and then get ready for the next big event.